Okay, welcome to another edition of the Rugby League Outsiders. My name's Craig.
And my name's Karl.
And in this episode, we're going to summarise the women's grand final that Karl and I went to. Was very fortunate to get to the game with our media passes and everything. It was an absolute cracking day. So we're going to mix in a little bit of our own little sort of summary, if you like, with some clips that we took on the day. So it should be a really great episode. Now, if you didn't get to see the game, go back and watch the highlights because it was an absolute belter and so much to kind of talk about. So, Karl, do you want to start us off and just talk to us a little bit about like the atmosphere as we was kind of approaching? Because we did have a conversation on the way up, didn't we, thinking how big do you reckon the crowd's going to be and all this kind of stuff. So what was it like?
Yeah, so I think first thing that took our sort of breaths away, wasn't it? We pulled up in the car and it was just a flock of people everywhere, wasn't there? All the bars were full outside the stadium. You know, the stewards were having marshalling people around. It was just a real buzz around the ground. And we instantly knew, didn't we, once we arrived, it's like this is a big event. It looked, you know, it was building really nicely. So we sort of got chatting to a few people outside the ground, took in the atmosphere a little bit.
We were expecting like, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 people in the crowd. You know what I mean? Sometimes you see it on the telly and the crowd looks sparse. But this was a standalone feature for the women's game. And obviously, you know, the big game of the season. And when we got there, it was like, no, this is going to be more than like 1,500 people. You know, and it definitely was.
And they got it right with the stadium as well, with it being at the LNER Stadium. It wasn't too big, it wasn't too small. So you went into the ground through the foyer area. It was packed. You got into the stadium, and it was just the right size ground. It just felt perfect, in my opinion.
It was new, wasn't it? It was all new.
Yeah.
It's not like some, like playing at Wakey or something like that. It just, it's great new.
Wakey've got a new stand.
Yeah, but a stand don't make a stadium, does it?
No.
But it was all new. Like you say, there was like shops, bloody bars and all that kind of stuff under it and around it, and yeah, it was just really, real good set in there. It
felt like elite level sport, which is what rugby league should feel like. They had it right. It was everything about the day was perfect.
Yeah, even the fucking fireworks nearly blew our heads off.
Yeah, they didn't give us a warning about them, did they? I was stood next to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So just talk to us. How did the day sort of pan out? Obviously, we've got a couple of clips. We'll show the intros and I'll give you a bit of a feel for the atmosphere here.
I'm pitch side with Martin just a couple of minutes before kick-off. Martin, Leeds fan through and through. What can we expect from today's game?
Well, I watched York play last week and I'm expecting a really close game, but I'm not really worried who wins. I mean, as long as it's a good game, playing in the spirit of rugby league.
Without doubt, it's going to be a great game, absolutely.
Right, so we watched the teams warming up. I think one of the things that took me when we were stood on the sideline, sort of watching the teams warm up, when the players walked out, there were just like beaming faces on some of the players. Like it meant so much to them to be playing in such a big game. There was certainly some nerves there. It was very evident from watching the teams warm up. Some players were dealing it a bit better than others. So we sort of took in the atmosphere, got talking to a few people in the crowd, just really let it build. And there was sort of rugby league royalty there as well, really, wasn't there? Your big hitters. It were on Sky TV. JJB was there in the crowd signing autographs and all that sort of thing. It was massive occasion. So we watched the teams warm up, and after that it was the Jerusalem was sang, Ronnie Rhino was there.
Yeah.
The South Stand band was there. York had their own band in the other side of the stand. It was just building nicely.
Yeah, there was a band off, weren't there? They were like
band off
each other, little dueling bands, but yeah, it all added to the atmosphere. And then obviously the kickoff, and I think it's safe to say. I mean, obviously we know the outcome of the match now, but it's safe to say like York had a grip of the game. There was a couple of times when Leeds started to get a little bit of momentum, but ultimately York had a grip of the game from the start. And it was interesting that I think John Wells on Sky TV had done like a little They did a piece on the on York in the run up to the game. Yeah, so I don't know if York just prepared better than Leeds or whatever, but and then we're on to the kickoff, Karl.
Sort of Leeds seemed to struggle a little bit initially. There was a lot of uncharacteristic errors. York really seemed to take a stranglehold of the game. They seemed a bit more consistent with what they were doing. There's some great battles on the field. I don't know what your thoughts on it were. I
think York were just much more clinical. You know what I mean? They were stringing players together. They were running lines. You know what I mean? Like Tyra Jane Stanley was just like hitting, popping up all over the place on their attacking line. And the defensive play I thought was really, really strong and really well connected. Leeds made some, the errors, like you say, like the drop balls. High balls are going up and drop balls. It was great conditions, and there's not really any other external factors for that other than perhaps nerves, or they felt the pressure or something. They kind of struggled with any kind of go forward, in my opinion. Like, their a lot of their drives, like individual efforts, making a bit of yardage, particularly in the second half. But yeah, just dominated. Not massively dominated by York, because obviously it was a very close game, and we can't take that away from them. But yeah, just missed that little clinical edge, which I thought would have just got them into the game and give them a win. But
Leeds did have sort of the first chance, didn't they? Caitlin Beavers sort of went over on the far side. I think he went to the video referee and was disallowed. So that were a little bit against the run of play. But then York really sort of camped down in the Leeds half then for a good sort of 15-20 minutes. And Tamsin Renouf broke the deadlock over on the left-hand side with the first try.
Yeah, it was a great try. Missed conversion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then, but absolutely static. The crowd went absolutely nuts. You know what I mean? As the York crowd, obviously home crowd, just went crazy with the freaking vuvuzelas and the. What do they call them bloody sticks that they bang together? I don't know what they call them, but Jesus Christ, they're loud. That between them and the band, it was just nuts. Tyra Jane Stanley took the conversion, missed the conversion, and then kind of back into play. And I think Leeds sometimes quite often they kick the ball down the throat of Tyra Jane Stanley, and I challenge anybody to try and tackle her one-on-one. You just can't. She has bloody legs like a sodding ostrich, as a stride bigger than you could freaking imagine, and will beat that first player every time, with her pace and agility.
I think you said at the time, didn't you, a sidestep's about 10 metres.
Yeah, it is. She's good enough to make any player just look foolish, trying to tackle her. But they kept kicking to her. Now, whether that was a bit of a tactic, trying to tire her out and thinking, we'll deal with that first tackle, and then maybe she'll be out of the play. Maybe she won't pop up in the line later in the play. But she did. You know what I mean? And was quality throughout the game.
I thought the battle between Tamsin and Amy Hardcastle was an interesting one. Amy's obviously the big name Leeds player, and she's playing in the centres. I would have liked to have seen her in the second row, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But Tamsin seemed to get the better of her, especially for that first try when she sort of wriggled out and turned the body and got the ball down. That was a really sort of interesting battle that was going on between those two.
Well, we know how strong a runner Amy Hardcastle is, and she just normally skittles players. They really sort of tackled her well. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say they dominated her, because she always found her elbows and knees. She always got herself into good position on the floor, but she just didn't make that extra few yards that she would normally do, and she didn't make those breaks that she's, she typifies. Typifies probably the wrong word. That's characteristic of her game. You know what I mean? And that was kind of missing. Almost, it didn't keep her quiet because she was still great, but yeah.
I think you got to take your hat off to York's defensive line. Really, it was apart from the try that they conceded on the hooter, they didn't concede a try all afternoon. And if you're not conceding a try, you're not going to lose any games either. The defence was absolutely immense. It was so tight that there was no way through.
Yeah, between that and then those errors that we're talking about from Leeds, drop balls, especially in like the high balls, good chase from York. It just all added up to the fact that they just couldn't get they couldn't get a grip. In the second half, they did get a bit of momentum going as they changed some of their running lines and, up the centre of the pitch. You'd obviously, instead of, I don't know what the decision was, whether it was instead of trying to work the flanks and all that kind of stuff, just hit those lines in the middle, elbows and knees, quick play of the ball. They started to get a bit of momentum, but then York just shut it down eventually.
I think probably mentioned the second try. This was like a sort of, I thought, was a big moment in the game. So Tara Jane Stanley sort of hit the ball out wide, quick sidestep. She went through a gap, speed to burn, absolutely. Just opened up the Leeds defensive line, and York 8-0 at that point.
Yeah, and that took us to the halfway, didn't it?
The hit. Yeah.
Oh no, we missed the hit. Freaking hell. So yeah, a standout moment in the first half is a tackle from hell. It was just the whole crowd was just, everybody was just like this visceral, ooh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the high ball was put up, and I think it was Ruby Enright that sort of juggled the ball on the first catch. And
it weren't a convincing catch, was it?
No, she composed herself, took it forward, took a quick few steps, and Rhiannon Marshall just came in and hit her with absolutely everything. It was like the whole crowd just went, whoa! Like, it's like, and then immediately after the hit, it was like everyone was sort of going,
it's still in a daze. Was the only person that wasn't a daze was the Leeds player that just been whacked. She bounced up and
got
cracked
up and
on,
played the ball, and everyone was sort of going, was that legal? Like, it was just unbelievable hit.
Yeah,
it was. That was Sam Burgess, Adrian Morley-esque tackle, wasn't it? That it was. I ain't seen a hit like that all season. Yeah,
that'll be in every show reel next year. You watch, it'll be like boom. That tackle again. It's definitely a it's going to be like an infamous tackle.
Well, I think after it was just moments before half time, wasn't it? That and everybody sort of rushed to the bar then to watch it on TV, to watch the highlights on TV. It was like, what did we just see then? That was just absolutely something else.
Well, for me, it felt like it was double speed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it was running the line, running the ball in, and then bam! It was just like, before you knew it, it was like double speed. It was bouncing on the floor. And yeah, it was just a great tackle.
It was so quick. I think everybody was like, have we just witnessed an absolute amazing hit, or have we just seen somebody be assaulted, or what? It was just off the Richter scale, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was like, have I just had a stroke and lost 2 seconds of my life? Because that was just too quick.
It was so quick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was massive though. What a hit.
Yeah, and my thought now is like, in a time when tackling is scrutinised so much, especially in the union game. Like, what if rugby union players watch that clip? What would they think? What would they be thinking of this violent collision sport? Where their game's almost been choked in it.
I think it'd be interesting to see people comment on that as well. And is that something that should we promote in the sport with, or are we going to frighten some young girls to death?
Yeah,
seeing sort of a hit like that.
I don't know. I mean, we've seen it in our local women's team. They're not scared of big hits. They're not scared of controlled violence like that. They kind of thrive on it. And which is immense, isn't it? You know what I mean? It really is.
I mean, like for the rugby league enthusiasts like ourselves, that's just that's the sort of tackle I love to see. I was probably one of these people who, when they remove the shoulder badge, was like, you can't get rid of the shoulder badge.
The piff.
I suppose like a couple of years down the line, we've sort of got used to head injuries and been educated a bit more, haven't we? But just to see a big tackle like that it electrified the crowd, didn't it?
Yeah, another standout player that did a lot of the hard yards, the unseen work, was Georgia Everington, who ended up getting the player of the match. What stuck out from your point of view, Karl, as to why she got the player of the match? And
well, she was absolutely solid in defence. I don't think anybody went past her all day. Well, they didn't. If you look at the scoreline, Leeds didn't make many breaks past her, if any at all. But she's not very big, but she got in there and did the hard yards. I think was going into acting halfback, early tackles, taking the ball forward, taking a bit of pressure off the forwards. You know, when they needed a bit of a breather, she just grafted over and over again. She had quite a few sort of half breaks where she managed to break the line and looked for a pop pass and things like that. She's an absolute workhorse, I thought.
And very courageous. Like you know, size, I mean, you know, we've seen time and time again, size often doesn't mean anything. I remember looking at her at the start, as they were kind of warming up and as the teams walked out onto the pitch, and thinking, there's some bruises out there, and she looks delicate, but my God, she must have the heart of a lion. She's so courageous, you know, never stopped running all day, you know, and an outstanding performance for her. The run into half-time, obviously you got amongst the crowd and amongst some of the pundits and all that kind of stuff, and had a few conversations. What was the standout comments from them, Karl?
Well, we spoke to Danica, and she gave us a bit of a lowdown on and where she thought women's rugby league in general was, and you can see that clip here.
Danica, you've seen the evolution of the women's game. You know, how impressed are you with what you've seen today?
Oh, look, it's phenomenal. I've been retired 2 years next weekend, and the progress just in that 2 years is massive. You've got athletes out on that field today, and that's the difference we've had now. The amount of work going in behind the scenes to make them actual, you know, and the better athletes they are, the better product it is. The more chance we've got of attracting more people, and that's what it is. It's just a real show of athleticism. Yeah,
it's been great to see it just grow year on year out. And how much do you know about the development of the game outside of the sort of heartlands in the Midlands and the South? How's that going?
Yeah, it's massive, and the likes of Cardiff, you know, they can really push to be in our Super League. I know they're in the Super League South, but actually they've put in a few contests against in the Challenge Cup, and they've got the opportunity to come up and actually put in a real shift up here. So I'd love to see the merge. You know, Midlands is quite fresh, but definitely in the South, they've got some teams that could definitely compete up here.
Yeah, we was at the Midlands final earlier this year between Telford and Coventry, and the standard there, it's in its early stages, but the standard's really great. Do you think the tiered system that the RFL's put in place, do you think that's going to work further down the line?
I think the bigger picture needs to be to have a general league.
Yeah.
But for now, you don't want teams that are brand new, like the Midlands teams, you know, the Telford teams coming up and having big scores put on them. You know, they need to build and progress and get used to bigger occasions like the final that they had.
Yeah.
And that makes them, you know, used to it coming up. You know, ultimately, I prefer to have a huge one league, and that's how it works, just like the men's game does. But in terms of progress, they're competing at the right level at the minute. But opportunity to step outside and compete against this Super League, even if it's a Challenge Cup or however it might happen, pre-season friendlies, whatever, they need to definitely test themselves.
Yeah, okay. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the game, and thanks for speaking to us.
No, thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah, good to start to her, as was, you know, with everybody that we spoke to that day, you know, giving up their time to comment on sport we love. From there, went on and spoke to Leeds legend Jamie Jones Buchanan, who we kind of tackled as he was coming out of the hospitality thing with some of our sandwiches in his pocket, I think. Not that I'm bitter about these freaking sandwiches.
Yeah,
but,
we didn't let him get to his seat, did we?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, so, clips here.
JJB, what do you think of first half, and how can Leeds get it right in the second half?
Well, I don't think they got too much wrong. You know, York are a very good side, and they scored a couple of nice tries. Certainly the one just before half-time's a bit of a killer, but I think the saving graces have missed both their conversions, which only makes it 8, and we've definitely got 2 tries in us. I think it's been a great battle, great contest, wonderful atmosphere, great event, and everything's brewing up to make it a good second half.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about the event itself. It's a spectacular, isn't it? We've got this standalone women's final. We've got a sold-out, packed, well, not sold out, but packed house. You know, it's everything the women's game should be, in it.
It's getting incrementally better every year, and it's testament to Rugby League and the people that invest time and energy and put it together. You know, I think the South Stand band coming along always makes a bit of a difference, getting the songs going, and credit to them. But again, it's up to the women. You know, they put on the spectacle every single week, and the game's just growing in intensity, it's growing in entertainment, and we all love getting here and supporting it.
And predictions for second half?
Oh mate, I'm Leeds that way through, all Leeds that way marching on together. I reckon we've got at least 2 tries in us. We're going to nick it back end. It's going to end up being something like 14-12 for me.
All right, cheers mate, thanks for your time.
Yeah, obviously Jamie Jones Buchanan, Mr. Leeds, you know, one club hero, and there was no way that he could contemplate York going on and win this game. He really thought that Leeds would go on and win and find some dominance, and he thought it was going to be tight, but it was wrong, you know, and York kind of saw it all the way through to the end. Okay, on to the second half then, Karl. They kicked off, and what went on then?
So Leeds, I think it's fair to say, did start the better in the second half. Got a bit of a roll on, sort of camped in the York half a little bit more, didn't they? And it sort of made it for a real tight game. I think they got did they get the first penalty? They did. They got a penalty, so it was only 6 points deficit at that point. It was just building for this big finish, wasn't it? And something was going to happen. Some of it was going to give one way or other. But it was York that got the try. Lacey Owen, I think it was a bit of a drop-off pass. They put through a gap. Route 1 stuff, went straight for the line. Just, no one was going to stop her, was there? She had half a gap there. She went for it, broke the line, bumped a tackle, hit the try line for a try for York. And I think at that point, we could sort of sense, I think everybody in the stadium could sort of sense it was probably going to be York's day.
Yeah, it was party time in the stands. You know what I mean? I remember going down and getting a bit of footage of the crowd just going nuts. And I remember obviously you can't see Ronnie the Rhino's face, but he just looked disappointed. You know what I mean? With all I don't know why he stood in the corner with all the York fans, but he did, and he was getting some absolute shite down there. And then we started this.
It's about a 5-minute party,
like a 5-minute countdown to the final whistle. You know what I mean? And yeah, Leeds were never gonna kind of get the win, and everyone kind of knew what the outcome of the game was going to be, and it just became this, ever approaching final whistle party time.
Yeah, it was counting down on the big screen, wasn't it? Like say, I think it was at least 5 minutes before the hooter went. They were counting down the clock and people celebrating in the crowd, and it was absolute madness. So much so that when the final countdown, the last 10 seconds, the crowd was sort of counting down. That the York players pretty much forgot they were still playing. The hooter went, but the ball was still live in play, and it just erupted, didn't it? In an absolute frenzy. People were just going absolutely wild all over the place. The York players started celebrating. Leeds were still playing, and they went and scored a try on the final hooter. But I don't think any of that mattered, did it, at that point?
No, it didn't. It was funny. Yeah, watch it if you haven't seen it. Caitlin Casey, she got the ball, looked up. There was the York players hugging everywhere. She just ran straight over the line and dove over the line. And what do they call it? A consolation try. You know what I mean? As at the end of a hard fought day.
Did they ever take the conversion? I don't remember seeing it.
I think they did. I need to look that back.
I genuinely can't remember, because it was just chaos at that point. There were just people celebrating all over the place. It was just I don't think they took the conversion.
I don't know. I need to look it back. Maybe they did, because I remember there being like a delay. There seemed to be like a delay, like where all the media and everyone is on the pitch or at the side of the pitch waiting for the celebrations to start, and there was a delay going on, and so maybe they did, and we just didn't see it because we were distracted by other scenes or whatever.
At that point, all the players' substitutes ran on the field, didn't they? And it were just
all the coaching staff.
It was crazy, wasn't it? Just absolute. I felt privileged to be there at the final whistle and witness what I witnessed. It was fantastic.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned the crowd, have we? The record crowd.
No.
Comments on the crowd?
Loud. We described it as a band off, didn't we? So I think the South Stand had the South Stand band from Leeds on one side, and we had the York band on the other side, just with a drum off going all the way through the game. Really great to see loads of young fans in the crowd as well. Awesome. Kids with a pair. It's fair to say there's a different type of crowd, isn't there, when you go to watch women's rugby? And I don't know if that's stating the blatantly obvious, but really sort of family orientated, weren't they?
Yeah. I mean, rugby league has always been different from like football. I think I remember taking a friend of mine who was a football fan through and through and he was shocked at there's kids, there's women, all generations. You know what I mean? Everyone mixed together. No like segregation, segregate the Man U fans from the bloody Leeds fans or whatever. None of that. Everyone's just in together. And of course, there's a little bit of angst every now and again. But on the whole, it's a great, it's great atmosphere, great crowd. But yeah, there was definitely a higher percentage of women, a higher percentage of kids. You know what I mean? So no, I agree with you. It was a different crowd, but just as much freaking noise.
There was over 4,500 people there, which is the biggest ever Super League women's crowd, and it was no less than it deserved because the action on the field was just unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. All right, so a couple of key moments from the celebrations. Obviously, you cut about, started chatting to coaches, players. What was standout moments for you?
So standout moment for me was sort of seeing Liv Gale. She was sort of taking her boots off and signing her boots and giving it to some young kids on the sideline. Yeah. And I sort of I just took that in. It was sort of like, she's sort of inspiring the next generation of players, which was really great to see. Got to speak to Lindsay Anfield, the head coach, as well. I think the relief was written all over her face. God, they'd finally gone and won that grand final. They were two sort of standout moments for me. What say you?
Well, you mentioned Lindsay Anfield, and I remember one moment where shortly after the game, and Lois Forsell and Lindsay Anfield sort of they kind of came head to head. You know what I mean? And they give each other a hug, and it was an indication of the contrast between the two teams, a winning team and a losing team. You know what I mean? The disappointment was written all over Lois's face. She could not show any emotion. I think she was holding back so much, and but was trying to stay stone-faced and all this kind of stuff. I'd love to, penny for your thoughts. What a moment, just to get an idea of what she was truly thinking at that moment. And then Lindsay was very, very respectful. Am I right in thinking there'd been a bit of slating of her in the press before the game, saying that she choked in big games and all this kind of stuff?
I think I don't think it was immediately on the run up to this game, but I think it has been sort of mentioned before that the York have they have been up there, haven't they, for the past couple of years, but they've never managed to get over that line. Leeds are the big club, aren't they?
Yeah, Leeds Saints, big clubs.
You sort of kind of expect that, and so I think it was great for her to finally get over the line, and now, York are now the champions, well deserved.
And on the day, they were never going to be best of mates, but they were very, very respectful of each other. And that moment, we have a clip, we caught it on camera, and it was really very poignant for me. And the contrast between the two players, the two sets of players and teams, because obviously we all know that it takes a team to win a final, not just or a club, should I say, to win a final, not just a team on the pitch. And the other moment was like I'll throw another one actually. One of them, you was interviewing Tara Jane Stanley, and then Tamsin came and just jumped on her head and like singing "Champion," and I'm like, you fucking lager out, get away. that really stands out in my mind. And then the other one was like after the game. And we were kind of watching the highlights back on Sky TV, and then you're all over Sky TV interviewing Tara Jane Stanley, which it was just brilliant, wasn't it?
We made John Wells wait for that interview, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We did. So yeah, lots of standout moments. I'll never forget it. Like it sounds a bit thing because we've seen plenty of big games in our time, but it was special being involved. We're not involved. We were just kind of covering it, and but we were there. We were present, and I'll never forget it. Like
no, I felt like as I've said, I felt really privileged to be there, and I felt like I'd witnessed a bit of rugby league history.
Yeah.
The women's game's been. I think we've had a league since 2017 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I really felt like we witnessed the next level of Women's Super League, where it had gone up a notch. The crowds had gone up a lot. I felt privileged to be watching a bit of history, and it's going to go from strength to strength. That felt like the start. Well, I won't be surprised if we're sat here in a couple of years' time and the crowds are 20,000 plus for the women's grand final.
Yeah.
It's what I expect. It's no less than the product deserves on the field, because it was an amazing day.
I'm just going to throw this at you, Karl, as I always do.
No.
Put you on the spot. Do you think there'll ever be a time when women's crowd the women's crowd will exceed the men's average crowd?
Ooh.
That's an interesting question, isn't it, really? And I'd like to think there'd be a balance. But I wonder if the women's game is on such an ascendancy that it will supersede anything that we're seeing in the men's game.
That's a difficult one to answer, but potentially, yeah. I think, you know what I think that's good with the women's game? It's growing all over the country.
Well, it can't it? We was having this conversation where it was like, you can create a team in the Midlands and you can pull in some blooded union players or some athletes from other sports, and you can teach them the rules of rugby league, and they can compete with not the Super League clubs or even the Group B clubs and all that kind of stuff, but they can compete with women's teams in the north because we're all of the same generation. They're all of the same generation.
Yeah,
whereas
they've all started within 10 years of each other, say.
Whereas, you get someone like Wibsey, right? An established team that's been around for 100 years or however long it's been around. I don't know how long it's been around. How long it's been around, Wibsey?
Early 90s.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, fuck them off. Right, so
Siddle.
Right, fucking hell, Siddle. You know what I mean? Absolutely bedrock of rugby league. So many. There was one generation, I told you before, that a friend of mine coached this generation, and near enough every kid, in fact, maybe even every kid, ended up with pro terms on one club or another. Yeah. Tyler Dupree is part of that generation. A ton of them. Cruz Lehman, was the generation before. Just a load of players have come out of that club. Now, you form a team in the Midlands, and they're just not. They haven't got the heritage. They haven't got the. They're not going to compete with these kids. You know what I mean? That have just born into it. But in rugby, in women's, they can. Yeah. Is my point. So
well, you've only got to look at the new teams that are popping up all over the place, especially in the south and the Midlands and the west. Like I say, it's exciting. It's to see where we could be in 10 years' time with the women's rugby league. So yeah. So to answer your question, I don't know if it'll be the same as men's. If it can be that big, maybe it's got. I don't know, but you never know, do you? You never know.
I'll tell you what I will say though: if there is women watching this podcast that want to get into podcasting, you start covering the women's game because it is the trajectory on it can it's going to be a very, very popular show and an absolute must-have guest for us in the future.
Yeah. Definitely. We've got, we had a couple of female guests on, haven't we? But we'd love to get more female guests on that are involved in the women's game. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, moving on. A little bit of a look forward. Our next little road trip, we're going up to mighty Leeds, and we're going to cover the wheelchair game. In the run up to it, we've also been invited to do a little bit behind the scenes coverage and a few interviews at an England training camp, which is massively exciting. I put a post out the other day where we've been very privileged to do a lot with this podcast in less than 12 months, and this is incredible. To get invited to an England camp.
Yeah, it's a bit goosebumps sort of stuff, to be honest with you. Yeah, I can't wait to see what elite level international rugby is going to look like behind the scenes. I'm really excited to speak to these players and get an insight into it. And, it's on the run-up to the France International, which is just massive now. It's as big as it gets for wheelchair rugby league, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of slating going on. We were chatting before, weren't we? The French... There's a documentary.
Yeah.
And Wheels of Steel, is it called?
Yeah.
And the French just slay England, don't they? Don't it's like pre-match niggle where they're trying to get into people's heads or whatever, or there's a hatred there.
Well, it goes back a lot of years, doesn't it? So I think it's fair to say most people, like ourselves, really started getting interested in the wheelchair rugby league at the World Cup, wasn't it? That's when we really started getting invested in it. And we saw everything that went on in the last World Cup between England and France, and there was niggle there, and that was interesting. God. But it goes back so much more years before that, and it's to now see England as the world champions it was always France that were the champions before. So now to see the French coming back at them, I can't wait, mate.
Who are you looking forward to chatting to on the camp, Karl?
I'm really looking forward to speak to the head coach, Tom Coyd. Sort of seen a few stuff behind him. He's like a fascinating character. The Coyds are really involved with the England counterpart. Martin was influential in starting the England team, and wheelchair rugby league has played a massive part in it. He's invited us along. But yeah, Tom, I'm really, non-disabled person that's, he's the head coach of it. It's sort of, I'm interested to see how he coaches and what his sort of mentality is like. It should be fascinating, that should.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to just learning more about the intricacies of the wheelchair game. Does a forward have a different chair to a back? You know what I mean? It's like we don't know, and there might be stupid questions and all this kind of stuff, but I'm sure other people have got the same curiosity about the game. So I'm really looking forward to that, and meeting the personalities, because there's genuine personalities in that team.
I think it's going to be the first time. So that in the World Cup it was a properly marked out pitch, wasn't it? Like they used some sort of vinyl or something, don't they? I think it's going to be the first time this year that there's going to be a properly marked out fixtures. I think Betfred have took on the sponsorship of the wheelchair game from next year, and I think so it'll feel like it won't feel like you're watching a game in a sports hall or something like that. It's going to be a full marked out pitch. It's in the Leeds Arena, which if you've been to Leeds Arena, it's absolutely amazing little venue. It's really steep. You get a brilliant view from wherever you're there. I just hope it feels like this massive international that it should feel like. It's going to be thrilling, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Further on from that, obviously, once we've done the wheelchair stuff, got those episodes out, we are dipping then into the world of student rugby league. So we're gonna be following all the four nations, the home nations, and their preparation.
I think they have like North v South as well in the early part of the year as well.
Oh right, yeah. So we'll run through all of that and really get into student rugby league, which there's some great talent emerging from in that part of the game. So it'd be good to kind of keep up with that. So stay with us for that if you're interested in the student game. Karl, anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you, or is there anything that you want to finish off on and your final words?
Final words. Oh, I think two things I'd mention. One, Rhiannon Marshall's tackle is the biggest hit I've seen in the last couple of years. Absolutely blew my socks off. And two, I think just if you haven't been to watch women's rugby league, get to watch it, because it's going places and it's an absolute spectacle. It's just brilliant to watch.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So until the next episode, take care. That's the final whistle for this week's episode of the Rugby League Outsiders. We hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. And as always, if you have a story to tell, a club to plug, or a player that deserves recognition, we want to hear from you. So until next time on the Rugby League Outsiders, take care.